Good evening, everybody, and a really warm welcome. My name is Charlotte Dew. I'm the Public Programme Manager here at the Goldsmiths Centre, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Eleni Bide, who is the librarian and looks after the library and archive at the Goldsmiths Company.
Thank you very much for joining me this evening. As Charlotte said, my name is Eleni Bide. I'm the librarian for the Goldsmiths Company, and me and my team look after the company's amazing and historic library and archive. And I'm going to be taking you on a whistle-stop tour of some of the unique sources for creative inspiration, technical know-how, but also just general interest that can be found in the Goldsmiths Company Library and Archive this evening. Now, before I delve deep into these treasures, it's worth just giving a little bit of context. The library and archive are just one branch of the company's unique collection, which encompasses everything from the fabric of Goldsmiths Hall itself, which is a Grade 1 listed building, to its internationally famous silver and jewellery collections, which I'm sure you've come across, and you'll be able to attend lots of talks about those on future dates. But the library and the archive is one distinct collection within this wonderful group of material cared for by the Goldsmiths Company. And they're stored in our very atmospheric wood-panelled reading room, and there's a little glimpse of one of the bookcases there in the picture, and also temperature and humidity controlled documents vaults as well. And I suppose at the moment you could well describe them as hidden treasures. Now, we live in a world where we are increasingly used to getting almost everything we need online in terms of information, and only a fraction of these collections have been digitised, although we do have a project underway to widen this considerably. So in that sense, you really are uncovering something that I suppose is not widely accessible in the way that we've come to be accustomed to over these past couple of months at least. But of course, there will always be wonders tucked away in the real world for those who want to go further than just the first internet search page in the pursuit of excellence or excitement. And if any of you have been looking at the creative prompts on the Goldsmiths Company's Instagram account, you might already have had a little taste of some of the wonderful things which we have and which are available to you as a resource. So let's start off by just looking at the first little group of material, and these are books. And I'm afraid to say this is the only slide I'm going to share with you that have books on at the moment in this presentation. We can have different talks and discussions about books, but we're going to be focusing mainly on the archives this evening. But it's worth mentioning that the Goldsmiths Company Library is the UK's largest specialist library for jewellery, silversmithing and hallmarking. There is no other library which, as it specialises in these books, that has a greater collection than ours. It has all of your favourite technical manuals, but it also makes a point of collecting books on subjects of jewellery, silversmithing and hallmarking, which can be expensive or difficult to find. And this is really important if we're thinking about sharing knowledge in these subjects. And I just have two examples up on the screen here. So we have a book on Mukume Gane by Steve Midgett. This is actually a recent gift to the library, which I'm incredibly grateful for, because these books are all out of print. If any of you have tried to get hold of some of Steve Midgett's Mukume Gane, they're expensive to find. And we also have up here an amazing, very different book. It's not a technical book. One could almost say it's a coffee table book by the wonderful Turkish jeweller Sevan Bisaki up there. This is a gift from the jeweller himself, and he creates this amazing lapidary work where you can see on the cover, I think it's Hagia Sophia carved underneath onto the bottom of the stone. So if you want to discover more about some of this incredibly specialised lapidary work, this book is incredibly important. And actually, we bought this, well, we acquired it especially because we had students who wanted to read it to find out about this work, and they could not locate it in any other library, including, in fact, at the time, the British Library. So again, just to give you a flavour of the wonderful depth you can get into with the specialist nature of the Goldsmiths Company Library. And I should say, we take requests and recommendations as well. So if there's a book that you really want to get hold of and to see, and you can't get hold of it yourself for whatever reason, you think it's important, then let us know, and we might well acquire it for you to come and have a look at. So this is a whistle-stop tour, and I think one slide definitely qualifies as a whistle-stop look at books, because we're going to move on to the company's archives now and a deep dive into these. And these really are completely unique collections, as of course all archives are. And we're starting, I guess, at the most logical place, the earliest record in the company's collection. And this is the first page of our first book, surviving book of court minutes, and it dates from 1334. So only very short, recording life only very shortly after the Goldsmiths Company gets its royal charter in 1327. It is an extraordinary survival. Very few livery companies actually have their early records. Most of them lost their early records in the Great Fire of London, but ours were rescued by a very forward-thinking and quick-thinking member of the Goldsmiths Company, who came and rescued them and carried them to safety in a cart that he commandeered. So we're very lucky to have these as survival. I like them because we think of company, medieval documents rather, as these amazingly, rich, I suppose, visually spectacular things. But actually, of course, we forget that most of the records would have been, ordinary documents, just like we work with today. It's just those are the things that tend not to have survived, and you get a sense of, maybe ordinary working life looking at these minutes. I should say, if you're trying to puzzle them out, they are written in Anglo-Norman French. I should say I can't read Anglo-Norman French, but we are very fortunate that they have been transcribed and translated, so we do know what they say. And one of the wonderful things about these early pages of minutes is they show the extraordinary continuity of the company's mission and the things that are really important to it. So on this very first page, you can find lists of apprentices who are bound, showing our commitment to training and to maintaining excellence in the craft through passing on technical skills and education. You can see lists of people who were in receipt of the charity of the Goldsmiths Company. If you're looking at this list on the slide here, that's what you can see. And this shows the central role that charity has always had in the life of the Goldsmiths Company. If you turn the page a couple of pages on in the same volume, you will also see lots of information about hallmarking and fines for substandard work. And this reflects our commitment to quality through hallmarking. So you have these three central planks. You have training and excellence through training and education. You have making the world a better place through charity, and you have maintaining standards through hallmarking. These are recorded in these very early pages, and they are written again through all of our history and carry on to be central to our mission today. So I think that's a wonderful bit of continuity. One of the nice things looking at these pages as well is you can actually see how the paper is made. So if you look at the lines, I don't know whether you can see some of the I don't know if I move my mouse with you, can actually see some of the lines on the paper there. This is where the paper pulp and this rag paper, which is why it has survived so well, really long fibres, very robust, have been torn up into a big mulch and then laid to dry in the bottom of a nice flat tray, and the ridges on the bottom of the tray have dried into the paper. So if you're thinking about how you identify different types of paper, some of our early records can be really interesting from that point of view as well. So we have the earliest thing in our archives here, which is a great thing. I'm going to move on now to something, I guess, which is more akin to how we would imagine old documents, medieval Tudor documents. And this is something that is much more visually arresting, much more glamorous in lots of ways. And these are pages from our second book of ordinances. So the ordinances are the rules and regulations of the Goldsmiths Company. They contain many oaths as well, and even today, if you're bound an apprentice, if you're made a freeman of the company, so a member of the Goldsmiths Company, you might take an oath. So there is lots that's in these books of ordinances, these books of rules, that's still relevant to how we operate today. Of course, there's lots that isn't as well. We don't abide by all these 16th century rules. For example, we're not going to fine you for working in a garret, which we might have done in centuries past. And in fact, during these long periods of lockdown, I suspect there are many goldsmiths out there who might be working in their garrets, their bedrooms and cellars, and all kinds of places. So one of the things I think it's worth looking at here, just the beautiful illuminations that you can see. We can have this look at this early rendition of the Goldsmiths Company coat of arms with the leopard lion heads, which of course are the leopard's heads for the town mark of London on the hallmark now, and also the cups and buckles representing large workers and small workers' work, which you can still find on our coat of arms. And over on the right, you have the first page of a lapidary. So that's a book of law and information about precious stones, which is in the back of this second book of ordinances. And there's a wonderful illumination there, and some fantastic gold leaf as well. I'm not going to talk more about the lapidary, as we in fact will have a separate online Zoom event about that. So if you want to find out more about lapidaries, tune in for that one. So I've given you a sense, I hope, of how old the archives are, and also, well, how old some of them are at least, and how beautiful as well. These can be extraordinarily beautiful. But what we're going to look at now are some of the important themes that can be traced through the archive and some of the different stories that you can discover. One of the most significant, I think, is the story of hallmarking. So these hallmarks are, of course, the standard marks to show purity levels, to show who is responsible for making something and when something is made, which are stamped on by law onto precious metal objects sold in the UK. And this is a law that dates back to 1300. So we have some wonderful records relating to hallmarking in our archives. And you can see over here on the left, the date letter O, and this is the date letter for 1729 to 30. And this is stamped into the court minute books. So if you're thinking, for those of you who are familiar with hallmarks, you might maybe have hallmarks from your own work, or you work with items that are hallmarks, and you wonder how do you know how items from the past, how do you identify all these marks? Well, actually, the answer is you come back and you look at some of these records. And incidentally, there was actually a piece in the Times, I think yesterday, which is a contemporary story about how our hallmarking records have been used in resolving disputes around hallmarking. We also have over here the Maker's Mark registration book, so one of our very early Maker's Mark registration books. And the Maker's Mark or the Sponsor's Mark shows who is responsible for the making of an item of gold or silver, and today it would be platinum and palladium too. So the person who owns the workshop, who is the master of the business. And I've chosen this slide because it includes, and again, let's see if I can get my mouse to show you, Paul de Lamourie's Maker's Mark, entered there in 1712. Now, Paul de Lamourie is one of the most renowned silversmiths the UK has ever produced. I would say he is probably maybe the most famous silversmith. His work can sell for millions of pounds if it comes up from auction now. So that gives you the, I suppose, a sense of the importance of the status of some of this work in, I suppose, contemporary art terms. And again, if you're identifying that, you're trying to make sure that it, these are real pieces, you might come and examine some of our Makers Mark registers. And one of the things I like about the Paul de Lamry mark is actually this is a problematic example, because I think he's been so important that lots of people have looked at this mark and possibly even touched it, and it's not quite as clear as it would have originally been. You can see that there. Your ability to touch the original documents is rather more restricted nowadays as well. And I suppose another wonderful thing to consider is, if you are registering your own hallmark, or maybe you have registered your own hallmark with the London Assay Office, you're becoming part of this incredible heritage. Your mark will also be entered into our archives. We will keep a copy of it for posterity. And so when people are trying to identify your work in hundreds of years to come, maybe it'll fetch the same kind of values as Paul de Lamry's, who knows? They'll be able to come and research. So by registering a Maker's Mark with us, you are in fact joining this fantastic heritage that goes all the way back to 1300. And I'm just showing you another slide relating to hallmarks here, because I think it's another thing to consider is now that there's a bit more flexibility around designing your own hallmark than there has been for lots of the 20th and 19th centuries. Sometimes these older hallmarks are fantastic for giving you inspiration, creative inspiration of what a resting hallmark sponsor's mark might look like. And I like here, this is the mark of Anne Tanqueray. You can see here, she's the widow of David Tanqueray, again in the early 18th century. David is crossed out. We've got Anne written over the top there, and you can see we can see various marks for the Tanqueray stamped into these marks registers. These wonderful cartouches and little sort of sunbursts as well. So lots of nice things to consider. So we have the story of hallmarking. So that's if you like art detective work, if you're thinking about your own work, that's a wonderful story that can be uncovered. But there are other stories as well, and I think another really I suppose a moving set of records relates to our apprentices. So people who have trained to be master goldsmiths through the Goldsmiths Company over time. And as I mentioned, our very earliest record back in 1334 mentions the taking of apprentices, and you can trace the names and the careers of people through the records all the way up to the present day. And what I'm sharing you now is one of our 17th century apprentice books. This is where when you're bound as an apprentice, when you're starting your training journey, you're signing up with your master and promising to serve them for a set number of years. You come and you traditionally, in fact today you still do it, you would write out your promise to your master, and then you would sign your name. And one of the reasons I say this is moving is because if you look at especially the signatures here in this book, you can see some of them are a bit shaky, some of them are a bit blobby, some people are better at writing than others. And a lot of these would be young people. You might start in the late 17th century, you might start your apprenticeship around the age of 14 years old. You might not have been a Londoner and you're coming to London for the first time, moving away from home. It's really daunting. You'd be coming to Goldsmiths Hall, which is a daunting building in any case. And so you get a sense of the nervousness there in those shaky signatures, in those mistakes and ink blobs. You get a real sense of someone at the cusp of a really important phase in their life. And when you talk to today's apprentices, which of course the Goldsmiths Centre is so important facilitating their training, when they come and write their names in what is Apprentice Book 12 now, this is Apprentice Book 2, we're in Apprentice Book 12, when they come and they sign their names today, they tell you the same things. They're a little bit older than 14, but not much. And they are nervous, and they say, when I hold the pen, it shakes, and I'm really worried about smudging, and there's too much ink in this pen, and you have that very same feeling. So I think I love the apprentice records because they just give you that connection to some of the people that have been in our craft over the centuries in a really kind of quite physical way, I think. Right, so we've talked a lot about people, but technical information is also something that you can discover in the Goldsmiths Company archive as well. And it makes up technical information, as I alluded to, makes up a really important part of the library's contemporary books and journals. So there are lots of contemporary publications we have that can tell you about how you make things, but we also have some fascinating historical documents as well. And the one I'm sharing with you this evening are pages from a publication called the Goldsmiths Storehouse. Now, this is a manuscript book, so it's written out by hand, it's not printed, by someone with the fantastic name of Hannibal Gammon Jr. So I think he's probably the best named person we have in our book collection. He is the son of a London goldsmith, and he actually receives a bursary from the company to go to university. And as a way of saying thank you, he uses this blend, I suppose, of his university learning. So he's a very good scholar. He can write things down and present them beautifully, with his family know-how on goldsmithing. And you can see some of this contained here. And we have a wonderful illustration of touch needles in this book here. And touch needles are, I suppose, a very early way of testing the metal content of precious objects. And in fact, if anyone wants to ask me how they work, you can do that later in the chat, and I'll be happy to share that with you. Some of you might know what touch needles are already. So let's have a look at something else. This is another technical, a few technical things, but I love these images. So we have some great images of workshops as well. The big one over on the left, this is from an early 20th century workshop. So Francis Higgins specialises in making flatware, so making cutlery. And one of the things I like about it is they label this image is labelled as Jenkin Thomas and a colleague. So we have the name of the silversmith in front of a small press. Does this look like a small press? It looks absolutely enormous. Look at the size of this piece of machinery. Imagine turning it. It just gives you a sense of the scale of silversmithing machinery in the turn of the 20th and 19th centuries. When it was really on an industrial scale. And this other lovely little invitation we have, 18th century invitation over on the right, showing an idealised goldsmith's workshop filled with tools. And you might well recognise some of the tools in your own workshops, for those of you who are makers yourselves. Again, showing some wonderful continuity within the trade from the 18th century to the present day. Now, some of our oldest technical documents, in fact, relate to the trial of the Picts, which is an annual legal trial of the coins produced by the Royal Mint, and this is still carried out today at Goldsmiths Hall. And we have been busy working out the logistics of doing it during this period of restricted movement. So that's been another tradition we have been continuing. So I really wanted to show you this, which is a fantastic plan of the trial plates used in the trial of the Picts, embossed with gold leaf. So I've certainly never seen so much gold leaf all in one place on a document. And this is, it really it's dazzling when you look at it. So I hope on the screen, but certainly in the flesh here. And in the tests for purity of the coins minted by the mint, the trial piece is the control piece. So it's the bit that you know of standard purity that you can trust, that you test the coins against, and it's cut up like a jigsaw. And different bodies, like the Goldsmiths, like the Royal Mint, like the Exchequer, all have their own piece. And so this is what this plan shows. And you've got some of the original trial pieces we have in the archive over on this side. Now, the next group of treasures from the archives are not only very beautiful, but they are also very useful for contemporary makers, I think. And these are designs and technical drawings from the 19th century to the present. And the first one is one of our oldest, the one I'm sharing at the moment. And this is from a presentation album given to the Goldsmiths Company in 1878 by the master and pupils of a technical drawing school, which the company funded in Hatton Garden, run by someone called Charles Mayer. This is an absolutely fabulous album of designs. It's very big, and it's the aesthetic is so wonderfully Victorian. I hope you'll agree. There's almost something slightly steampunk about it, I feel, in some of the pictures. The thing I love about Charles Mayer is he proposed lots of innovations for how the company might support technical education. But some of them are only realised when the Goldsmiths Centre comes into fruition. So in lots of ways, Charles Mayer is wonderfully ahead of his time, although I'm sure he would be rather, he was in his lifetime rather disappointed. The grand centre, the grand education centre he envisaged in Hatton Garden didn't come about. He had to wait well over 100 years for that to happen. We move on now in time a little bit. This group here of design drawings shows examples of designs from the Artificers Guild archive, which operated in the early 20th century between about 1903 and 1938. They produced silver and jewellery in the arts and crafts style. So you've got lots of lovely arts and crafts examples of drawings there. And we can contrast these with, I mean, a lot of these would have been, of course, contemporary with the artificers material. And these are quintessentially Art Deco pieces by the firm E. Podolsky & Co., again based in Hatton Garden. And these are working drawings, so these were designed to actually be used at the bench. You can see that in some of the annotations here. Although, of course, they do, despite the fact they're working, not presentation drawings, they really are very attractive. And then something a little later, we have this wonderful design for a bracelet by the famous female designer Suzanne Belperon. We're very lucky to have a very small collection of these in the Goldsmiths Company archive. And of course, we have many beautiful designs on silver as well. And I've just chosen two contrasting examples. We have a very practical page from the workbook of the silversmith Omar Ramsden on the left here, which dates to the 1930s. And this details the production costs of a piece. So you can see here, lots of it is actually in code, and you've got then selling price here at the bottom. I don't know whether you can see actually in the middle, POR, which is Profit Omar Ramsden. And the reason he writes in code is because he doesn't want any of the workmen in his workshop to know, what they're being paid versus the cost of the materials and his profit. So he's a very shrewd businessman, Omar Ramsden. You can learn a lot from his workbooks. And we've got a contrast here, of course, with a fantastic presentation piece. So this is a design entry for a competition to design the Ascot Gold Cup in 1946, which was run by the company. And again, you can see the difference between a presentation drawing and just something that's more workshop based there. And I think that the difference is really quite fun. Now, as this is only a whistle-stop tour, I'm going to very quickly mention one other significant group of archives, and those are things relating to the many important exhibitions of silver and jewellery, which have been held in Goldsmiths Hall since the beginning of the 20th century. Now, the exhibitions that we've staged over the decades have often actually changed the course of precious metal design in Britain, certainly. And you have the very poster for the very important 1938 exhibition of modern silver, and then the internationally renowned 1961 exhibition of modern jewellery, which has been written about extensively. And of course, we have the archives for these exhibitions at the hall, which are used extensively by scholars who want to find out about these groundbreaking events. I'm going to give you a little taste now of our photographic collections. Now, we have thousands of photographs, of photographic type images, lantern slides, glass negatives, digital images within our collections. Not all of them are, well, many of them are not catalogued yet, but we're discovering lots of wonders amongst them. But just to give you a few snippets, we have this very striking two images from the archive of Cameo Corner. Cameo Corner was a very significant gallery in the mid 20th century, late 60s, early 70s, promoting avant-garde jewellery, many interesting and significant jewellery designers working in the modern style. And you have an image here of two of them, Ernest Blythe and Francis Beck, in their workshop. Again, some of the tools that you would have recognised from that 18th century invitation hanging on the wall. And Frances Beck looking terribly fashionable with her styling there. So I really enjoy that. And I'm just going to share with you some contemporary images now, because of course the fact that we're still collecting and we're still adding to the archive, we are still documenting the work of goldsmiths and silversmiths and jewellers in the UK and beyond is very significant. So we have this wonderful silver item in Britannia silver by Mary Ann Simmons, and a mount for an en tremblance floral spray brooch by Jennifer Catter, who is a freeman of the company, and this was submitted as her masterpiece. And she actually researched how to make en tremblant jewellery with us in the library, and she did a wonderful research project on it. So again, what we're looking at here is quite literally a masterpiece. So it was one of the things that enabled her to become free. Just a few more contemporary things here. We have the Ambassador Diamond Necklace by Daphne Krinos, created in 2017. We've got the real thing over here, but of course we hold the original winning design for this necklace. It was commissioned by the company after a design competition. And also, again, going back to workshop images, we have a wonderful image of Daphne's workshop amongst many of our workshop images. Again, you can spot some similarities. All these pliers hanging on the wall, hanging on strings that go back to, you know, Blythe and Beck, and then to the 18th century workshop as well. So lots of fabulous continuity here too. Now, we don't just have photographs of jewellery in silver, we also have images which document the history of the company, and I think these can be very inspiring as well. So we have this lovely design here, well, drawing of Goldsmiths Hall as it was then in the 17th century, made in 1692 by a cartographer called John Ward. And I love the detail of the sedan chair in the foreground. There is a little dog, there's a boy with a hoop. So again, if you're trying to imagine yourself in the world of 17th century goldsmiths and silversmithing, this is a fantastic thing to sort of suck you right in there. Or you might be interested in something very different indeed. We have some images here relating to the very significant damage sustained to the hall during the Blitz of World War I. And you can see on the left just the devastation caused in the corner of the building, which now has the exhibition room and the drawing room in it. And for those of you who happen to have been around Goldsmiths Hall, and you know what it looks like now, it's very difficult to believe that all of this damage was caused and we've managed to restore the building. It's quite harrowing. But I think even more moving than that, you have this image here, this blurry image of the men and the women who really actually saved Goldsmiths Hall from burning down its entirety through heroic efforts in fire watching and putting out fires caused by incendiary devices during the Blitz. And they're there in their working clothes, probably after a very long and difficult night. These people work for, over 10 to 12 hours, minimum at a time during the night, putting out the fires in really dangerous conditions. And they're just members of staff at Goldsmiths Hall. So again, you've got a very different, but again, a very moving sort of set of stories associated with the archives here and the story of goldsmithing in this country. So I'm going to end now, and I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions. But I'm going to end with some of the most surprising things in the library's collections. These are not manuscripts, they're not drawings, they're not photographs, they're all things which you might commonly imagine to be in an archive. But they're things. We have lots of amazing, surprising things in the archives as well. And the fact that the company is nearly 700 years old means, I suppose, that shouldn't really be a surprise. I should say we're almost always discovering new things in Goldsmiths Hall, or objects that people bring to us as well. So they're always exciting discoveries to be made. And I'm showing you here a set of troy weights, and these are standard weights that the Goldsmiths Company in Elizabethan times would have used to test the weights of silversmith and trade silversmiths and jewellers, rather like trading standards do now when they go round to jewellers and they test all of their weights to make sure that no funny business is going on. And these are marked with ER for Elizabeth I. And they might possibly be going on display at the New Museum of London when that is finished. So once Goldsmiths Hall is open again and we can welcome you in person to the library, then you will have the opportunity, perhaps before these go on display, to actually come and look at them and handle them before they go in the glass case. So that would be very exciting. And we also have over here something again from Omar Ramsden's workshop. So he of the code and the workbooks in the 1930s. We also have boxes and boxes of things from his workshop. So patterns, castings. We have a little box containing a dried seahorse, which was used as a model. And these are wonderful things to give you an insight into how a silversmithing workshop would have operated at the time, and maybe ideas for making as well. I'm going to share my final slide now, because I realised I did promise keys to forgotten doors, and I definitely have one. So I'm sharing this with you. We have because it's in the big old desk that I sit at normally at the library in Goldsmiths Hall, is a wonderful drawer filled with old keys to doors which no longer exist. And when I became librarian, it was quite a shock to discover this drawer. But there's something slightly magical about it. You wonder, you'll put your hand in and pull out a key that will take you to another dimension or something. But some of these keys do have labels, and we have here one. So it says door in the basement of Sir Walter Prideaux's house, leading to the vaults. So Sir Walter Prideaux was a clerk of the Goldsmiths Company in the Victorian period. And he actually lived in Goldsmiths Hall. He had apartments within it, and actually the library now used to be one of the spaces he lived in. And obviously he had different passages which led to the company's vaults. So you can imagine this amazing sort of connected warren of corridors and passages, some of which of course still do exist in Goldsmiths Hall. So I like to think that the key also, I suppose, indicates that the archive and the library can open up all kinds of different worlds to you for research or just for your general interest. And before we open up for questions, I think it's worth making the point that Goldsmiths Hall Library and Archive is open to everyone. So under normal circumstances, when we're not facing these restrictions, absolutely anyone can come and visit us. All you need to do is to phone up or send us an email and book an appointment to get into that wood panelled reading room. We're also delighted to talk to you, so over the phone or email if there's a query that we can help with remotely, because not everyone can come to London, not everyone wants to come to London, but there's lots that we can provide you with remotely as well. And as we digitise our collections and as we get more online, that will all be available to you as well. So I really hope I'm going to be able to welcome you to the Goldsmiths Library and Archive in real life at some point. But if there's anything you want to ask us over the next few months especially, just get in touch. We'd be really delighted to speak to you.